It is now 5:04 p.m. and we call the advocacy meeting to order. Thanks everybody for being here in person, and I believe Ms. Grayson is here online. Thanks for joining us electronically. Yell out if you can't hear what we're talking about. We have several items on the agenda today, and the one which I'm sure you're all here to talk about is item number 1.01 is an update on the Accelerate Ed report. All 202 pages went live yesterday, and Dr. Turner and Mr. Saylor are here to give us an update on that report.
Well, I can tell you right now, we both want an increase on everything. I'll speak to the subcommittee area that I was participating in. Scott was on operations. Scott chaired the subcommittee on operations, so we broke it up into 3 conversations. I was on one that was related to building and student services. The 202-page document that Derek is referring to also includes a number of appendix items, one of which would be probably the largest in size is one from an association that deals with environmental standards for buildings called ASHRAE, is the acronym. And so their participation in the process was just to submit information related to environmental concerns for keeping the buildings safe once students come back in. One of the ideas that they brought to the table, if you remember in the news stories when COVID first started, related especially to New York, a couple of the hospital systems set up their heating and air systems to create a negative airflow, essentially reversing the airflow, and it would pull, in simple words, bad air out of the room in a different manner and be filtered quicker. That's one of the things that ASHRAE brought to the table from the facility standpoint. A lot of information was put in that document, though, that were suggestions for guidelines for districts to use. Most everything in that document offers options for districts. So, for example, what works in Greenville will not work in Saluda and vice versa. There are still a number of major concerns that still need to be dealt with, which we all know. Bus transportation being one of them, that's in Scott's area. But physical setup of a classroom was in our area. We spent a lot of time looking at options that we can offer to school districts on how to set up a classroom if we go back to school in the fall and if the social distancing is still at the same level that it is currently. Right now, every student has to have 36 square feet. And depending on the age of the building, you can put as many as 16 or 17 in a classroom. You can put as few as 10 or 11, depending on the age of the building. So those are some situations that the district's going to have to address locally on their own, in their own area. So that kind of gives you a 30,000 foot view. On the building side of it, on the student services side, we spent a lot of time talking about the need for more mental health counselors, for more nurses. One of our recommendations is that a nurse be in every school here. There's about a third of our schools, like 120 schools do not have nurses in their schools. So that's got to be taken care of and cared about.
They don't have what, Judge?
Nurses, no nurses. Then when it comes to mental health counselors, it's even worse. There are counties in South Carolina that do not have functioning mental health departments, much less a partnership like we have here that allows mental health departments to work with the school district to provide service. So those are a continuing challenge there. We also recommended lowering the ratios between guidance counselors and students. But at the end of the day, it all comes back to manpower. from the information we've received back from the school district. The need is pretty well equivalent across the board. There's not enough people out there that's qualified to take the job. One of the things that we did ask the legislature to consider in our report was where we are working to encourage retired teachers to return to the classroom through financial incentives, offer the same type of incentive for retired nurses and retired counselors, and see if we can at least get a stopgap for a couple of 3 years to help get through these current issues. So that goes in the hands of the legislature on that side. We've assembled the financial capacity or components of it, and we'll just see what happens. Right now, it's out for public comment. So if any of you would like to offer public comment, you can do that through the State Department's website. And we have a meeting on Friday, I understand, to finalize the report and make it public. And that's my part of the jury.
Just a couple of things to add to what Chuck said with the transportation piece. DHEC is still saying 50% capacity on the bus, and they're still saying social distancing in a classroom, which restricts how many students you can serve. They're also, at the state level, they're talking about coming out strongly. I don't know if you want to use the word, but some people are wanting to use the word mandate, mask, require mask. We've had discussions about how practical that is. And the fact that it probably needs to be coming from DHEC rather than the State Department. And I think in terms of messaging, they're going to try to do a campaign around if you want us to be open, then you need to wear a mask to try to get the numbers down. But the state is, at this point, I believe, only going to purchase one mask per student. They are going to purchase masks for our employees, up to 5 for our employees. I think the other things all had to do with just operational things within schools in terms of high touch areas, the cleaning. They're not going to pay for extra cleaning. We have to cover that when school starts. I think you guys included that in your budget last night. I'll be glad to answer your questions. I'm thinking I should think about it. It come to mind.
So a couple of questions, and then we'll open it up to the group. And if I could just, we do have several folks who are trying to listen in. The microphones won't pick up your voice to get you to the microphone over here, which is what's carrying the audience. If you could speak louder than you need to, just because you're speaking towards the podium in the middle room. So just a couple of clarifying questions. These recommendations are recommendations that are going to go to the State Department of Ed.
Correct.
And then it would be the State Department of Ed's responsibility to turn those recommendations into either policy or to not. I mean, things like we're recommending every kid have a mask. Like that, we're waiting on the State Department of Ed to tell us every kid.
That's the only thing that I think they're wrestling with in terms of, is it going to be a mandate requirement or is it just going to be a recommendation? Or in terms of DHEC, they're saying 50% capacity on a bus. Now, if the district wants to take on liability and say, we're going to put more than 50% capacity on a bus, then take on that liability for doing that.
Okay.
I don't think the state's going to, they're going to leave it up to local school boards to make decisions. You all will be where the buck stops in terms of what Greenville County looks like when all this rolls around.
Okay. The other question I would have is this is the advocacy committee, not the entire board. So the guidance we've been given, so we really need to focus our questions and our actions around specific policy recommendations that we may bring towards the state or federal government or local government. Is there anything in this document that needs to be highlighted by this board through the advocacy? So are there things we should be advocating for that are in here? Are there things that didn't make it in here that we need to really make sure attention is given to?
Yeah, that's a big issue.
One big issue with broadband that we've discussed, but the more people that participate in that conversation, the better. As we've said before, there's roughly 150 to 160,000 houses in the state that do not have broadband capability. And the challenge is not just getting the hardware to the household, but getting the service to the neighborhood or the community. And it's not where a company like Emporium would be delivering cabling down a road to a house or a subdivision that has 25, 30 homes in it. It's Emporium taking cabling down the street, maybe a half mile to feed one house. And so those are some issues. According to Chairman Allison, there are some monies that are being discussed now to help facilitate that out of the CARES Act from Accelerated SC. And that'll be a meeting that they're having next week.
Is there anything else in these recommendations that you feel like need extra attention from a larger school district to help maybe get it through? I know there's some issues about face shields and face masks, online curriculum, on-site curriculum. Is there anything else you feel like might get watered down if it sits in Columbia too long? So we need to make sure
I hate to put Julie on the spot, but Julie's been listening to the Senate. I think she knows where they're coming from in terms of how they feel about some of these recommendations. You want to speak to that?
Yes. The question, Julie, was, is there anything that we think might be in this report that could get watered down once the entire state elected officials starts looking at their rural communities as opposed to the needs of Greenville right now? Are there things that maybe we need to make sure we emphasize up here that are important to Greenville that might be missing point?
Well, I just got through listening to the Senate, and the things they were talking about were the different subcommittees that were part of the Reopen South Carolina Committee, and they're looking at everything from school to PPE to broadband, et cetera. The one thing that was said is they're talking about of all the money, the 1.9 billion that we're getting from CARES, so maybe expend 2/3 of that now and hold back 1/3 of that for when they go back in September, see what transpires over these 2.5 months, see how the economy looks. Now, one of the great issues that we heard today had to do with funding of the 5 days at the beginning of the school year, because what's coming out of Accelerate ED, and what's also come out of that from the governor's office is either 5 days or some flexibility for 5 days worth of remediation and assessment of students. But the Senate was very adamant, specifically Senator Mitch Shaheen and Senator Shane Martin from our area were very adamant that they wanted it to be going back to school full board, not e-learning, and going back at the beginning of the school year, and then making those 5 days be at the beginning of the school year. And so I know we've had some discussion about how we might handle that. So that is a lot of what I heard, but I don't know if there's any other particular issue that you have a concern about, or.
No, I just wanted to make sure that typically when a statewide report is issued, there are things that are really important to large communities that don't show up in the final recommendation, because they're not as important to Marble County.
Right.
So I just want to make sure now that we have a report and before we move to have positions, I'm going to move Dr. Oyster next, but I'm going to let him swallow the first thing. Okay, what in here matters to us that we need to make sure stays?
Okay, well, and I also talked a lot about broadband, and making sure that we have good broadband access for the very rural areas, but also, we have areas too where we don't have the best coverage. And so Senator Letterman and others saying that we're committed to making sure that broadband is strong across the entire state.
So Dr. Western, I know you have thoroughly read the 202 page, or we have talked about the filtration system HPC already today. So what, is there anything in here from your perspective that we really need to make sure that we highlight or ask to extra attention to get into?
I think this has come out to a degree. Not a reflection of the amount of time that they put in it. I think Scott and all those people a lot of time. And at the end of the day, this becomes a state report. One of the concerns that I see with it, and I think in conversations with other superintendents, they see a similar concern. There is a considerable amount of advice, very little direction. Now, in ordinary circumstances, we like the freedom to operate in the best way we see fit. But these are very unusual circumstances. I think everyone knows. Give you an example of what I'm talking about. There is a section in there. It has some very good information about what you do if there's a low, medium, or a high spread. So you either read it or not. What appears to be missing is what and who defines low, medium, and high. That's a concern. There is some wording in the document itself that has some fairly nebulous language about school bus capacity. If you read the Tennessee, one of them is from DHEC. His language is not ambiguous in the least. It says no more than 50%. So there are conflicts within the document itself. There is the lack of clarity and the lack of who should, could, and will provide that clarity. It says in one place in that document, districts, schools should provide 6 feet of social distance. Then it uses some other language that would lead one to believe, well, if you can't do 6 feet, you can do something less than that. Well, from all the information I've seen, the recommendation from medical people are 6 feet is the appropriate social distance. And for some activities, that high school league just released some guidance for return for athletics, and I believe for certain circumstances they use 10 feet. For example, being in the weight room, you get 10 feet between feet. So it says in one place you should socially distance, yet we know, and I think it perhaps did get included in it. I know that I think both of us, so and Dr. Turner provided a copy of it to them. We shared that with the board one night, the pictures that we actually took of the classroom, how many desks you can put in there and maintain 6 feet of social distance. So while there is substantial good information contained within the report, what is missing is direction. Well, that means it will fall upon approximately 80 school districts to determine direction. And it makes sense to me that you would determine direction based on local conditions. I understand that, and I'm not sure that's not the proper way to do it. But what's missing from that is where is the standard by which you would make that local decision? I.e., going back to that chart, you have low spread, medium spread, or high spread. Are we in a situation right now, given the number of cases that we have, that social distancing should be maintained? I continue to see recommendations by experts that you should do that, and it's not possible to do it with every student in our schools every day. Now, if there is better guidance to that says that 6 feet is good, but there's nothing wrong with 2 to 3 feet, I get to see that. I don't find that in that report. So I think a lot of work went into it. There's a lot of good information there. But we appear to have gone from an environment where there was a very direct direction, very clear direction. We're shutting schools down. We went from that to almost the very opposite end of the spectrum. And to me, that's concerning. And there is not this objective, fact-based guidance that says, in these circumstances, you should be here, and in these, you should be here, and these, you should be here. But that's my concern.
So we'll stop here and take questions from board members. Just as a reminder, we are in the advocacy committee meeting, not the board meeting, so we really need to make sure that questions are focused on specifically on policy recommendations as they relate to this report. I'm sure will be another opportunity for board members to ask questions about how programs will be affected, but that's really not the focus of this committee. So we still will call all the way to the fight.
It was just one question, Dr. Turner. You said a mask per student, is that one mask per day? It's just one mask for the whole year?
Again, that's not in the report. That was on a call that I was on part of today when they were talking about requiring masks. And I brought up who's going to pay for it. And they said they would consider paying for one mask per student for the year.
Okay. That's all I
Now you feel my pain.
Ms. Levin as well.
Ms. Lewis, if I'm out of order, please let me know. I just wonder if if they're leaving it up to the districts with these guidelines, where would we be held responsible if someone ended up with the coronavirus? I mean, what's the liability?
I had that conversation with Doug when they put out the DHEC put out the bus limitations. Because there was discussion about some districts, going back to what Dr. Dorsey was referencing in terms of there are communities that have very low COVID numbers. And I said, if you have a district who says, we want to load our buses up and have full wide open schools, and Doug, and I agreed because it came up in the committee discussion. The district then takes on the liability if a child were to contract or a bus driver to contract COVID in those circumstances. Again, because on today's call, they revised it and said that you should not even have someone sitting behind the driver. So I don't know how many seats behind the driver, they don't want a child. So then the district takes on the liability. If you go past 50%, then I guess you open yourself up to liability of a lawsuit.
My committee's conversations reflect that.
Okay. Doug?
So there are a lot of moving parts as it pertains to liability for COVID communicable diseases. There's one aspect would be to review what DHEC has in place and what our requirements are. And if we clearly ignore those and don't try to adhere to them, that's one issue. But there's also the aspect of 5-year-olds running around, and sometimes things just could be, despite our best efforts, not completely adhered to because of the nature of the students for a short period of time. So, there's there's an argument that would still fall under potentially, any claim would fall under the Tort Claims Act, which would require gross negligence standard, which is the failure to exercise slight care under the law. Now, that being said, a lot of this is still evolving, still trying to figure out what liability would exist. I know the courts are very cognizant of a floodgate coming in, and certainly they, as far as liability, as far as private businesses, for public entities, it's a delicate situation. So a lot of moving parts. Insurance is another aspect that's a factor in looking into all this, but certainly it's something that we need to be careful about.
And who would endure the cost of these lawsuits because we're acting in accordance with the state recommendations?
So we've had several conversations with our current carrier for insurance, and as of right now, and we're going to continue to have conversations, but they are of the impression, the opinion that as long as we follow these guidelines and with best efforts, that should really limit any liability. And one, it should limit liability, but also cause any coverage to be triggered by a lawsuit as well through the insurance carrier.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Sutton.
There are so many unknowns, it's difficult to come up with questions. And I was looking through this report, and Dr. Washington, on page 8, they're talking about communications. Is there any thought in us reevaluating our public calendar for next year?
I'm not sure I heard all of that, Mr. Sutton.
The question is, are we going, is there a possibility we will reevaluate our published calendar for next year?
There's certainly a possibility. I believe one of the questions we asked on the parent survey had to do with the period of time between Thanksgiving and Christmas. Perhaps doing e-learning during that period of time. We also are looking to see what kind of answers we get back about how do they feel about being in school. There's some people that would argue that we should start school earlier because there might be a second wave. Then there are other people that will argue, well, you should wait and start later to see if the conditions improve before you start. Right now, what we're looking at is maintaining the same start date that we had. Now, if they remain adamant about these 5 days and having no flexibility with them, we will probably be bringing in some 1st through 8th graders. And primarily what we do with them is assess what they need, because there's not much else we can do with them 5 days prior to school starting, when we can't assure they will be with the teacher they'll have during the school year. So school for them, some number of them might start some number of days up to 5 before school starts.
Looking at the start dates that they put in here, districts may want to consider pushing their start date back to after Labor Day. Number one. The second thought here is the year-round calendar, 9 weeks, followed by a 2-week break. And then there was an extended winter break, yes. From Thanksgiving to July till January the 1st, we'll be out of school, extended break. And last thing was scheduling by semester instead of passing a school year classes. Are any of those possible something? And I know it's just hefty, questions that really don't know enough about.
At this point, so I wouldn't say that there's anything on there that's not something we might consider. I don't think it's very probable that we would do any of those things. for a number of those, there's a little bit bigger, there's an offsetting downside to what they see as the positive side. Now, going to year-round school, there are a lot of positives in that, but the problem with doing that is we're sitting here right now. If you go to year-round school, we're not geared up to be able to start it to do year-round school sitting this close to the beginning of school year. One thing you have to do, we don't have commitments from employees to their availability, the employees being predominantly teachers, to start school at an earlier time, which you would do under a year-round school model. So that's something that most districts that have ever undertaken a year-round school model, they spend a year or two preparing to do it. I think you need a minimum 6 to 8 months before you did it to prepare for it. So that's probably not something that's practical at this point, but I wouldn't say there's anything on that list that we might not consider. There's just so many, as you pointed out in your question, there's so many unknowns.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Senator. Ms. Wells.
So it seems like the biggest limiting factor is probably more the bus, making the bus route work or the classroom. So what would happen if we said we can't provide bus service? And try to run.
I guess in the short term, the first answer to that would be, I suspect it's not legal in South Carolina to say that. Though you need to research the statute. The second, more practical consideration would be, since we've actually had experience with this, 4 or 5 years ago, the governor decided to utilize our buses for hurricane evacuation. So we know, based on that experience, that on any given day, there were about 4,000 some odd students who consistently over that period of time didn't come to school above and beyond the normal absentee rate. So based on that, you can roughly assume about 4,000 students had no other way to school. At that time, we might have been transporting, I don't know, maybe 23,000. So obviously a bunch of them found their way to school. But there was pretty much a core number of about 4,000 plus or minus a few over 4,000 who didn't get to school.
Did we, I remember that. What I remember is we did not, kids had an excused absence. They had a pass, basically.
Right, we did not penalize them because we couldn't transport them.
I remember there were some kids that just didn't go to school because they didn't have to go to school. So if we, I guess, following that line of thought, if we're providing instruction, because we talked yesterday about having an e-learning opportunity, and then we would need to be able to get enough people to commit to the e-learning. So I guess I'm wondering, is it alternative to say, because we can't safely provide bus transportation, that we would say we would provide e-learning to any student that couldn't be transported or couldn't get transportation to school? Because I think that's probably the biggest place where you are more likely to have the liability of you can't enforce the separation because the driver's driving the bus. So is that?
I think you end up there with a cross section of the ones that are least likely to be able to access internet and Wi-Fi from home with the population you're talking about. So that would be a concern and issue. And just in general terms, if you equate student achievement with poverty, which is there's obviously a high correlation between the two. I remember we're at like 69% poverty riding our buses. So we're talking about those students that generally speaking, this is obviously a generalization, they struggle more in school, and they probably have greater barriers to have access to internet and Wi-Fi, going back to the earlier issues about broadband, than others do. And one of the things that we did, we had a pretty high rate of connectivity when we were doing virtual. Remember, we put 22 buses out into areas that do not have Wi-Fi and or do not have good internet access. So they were able to go to those buses. We also were running, I hope I'm not remembering the number wrong, 60 some odd buses as feeding sites, which also provided mobile Wi-Fi into parts of the community, in addition to the 100 school sites. So if we're running regular school day in transportation, we don't necessarily have those assets to go out and plug those gaps that we know exist with internet connectivity. We have now, I don't have it here with me, we have now by zip code, I think they were working on a block characterization, I've heard of, who doesn't have connectivity. Really down to the household level. So that's a concern if you limit transportation. And then again, one of the uniquenesses of South Carolina is so much of transportation, public school bus transportation, is statutorily defined. And so Doug would need to look through those applicable statutes to really probably fully answer the question.
Okay, so then back to the kind of the recommendations and liability question. So if we took those recommendations and we looked at those in the context of having some experts locally, so if you talk to some mental health experts or some other kind of credential we'd be looking at to talk about what the environment would be like for our children if they are required to wear masks and the impact on the environment. Are the recommendations such that we could have an evaluation done locally that would say, for instance, the use of masks, especially in lower grades, is going to inhibit the quality of the classroom experience to the extent that we wouldn't recommend it? And then use that as a way for us to determine how we're gonna deliver services outside of those guidelines?
The way we would do that is the first group we would ask, like we've done on other things where we acted independently of the study. We're gonna ask an epidemiologist first. So we're gonna want to hear from medical professionals, what is the benefit, and what is the risk of a student wearing a mask? Well, the immediate downsides that you think about with a younger student, what's one of the first things that most medical people have said you should not do related to being in an environment where you're potentially exposed to coronavirus? It's something that most of us do 90 times every 3 touch your face. So, there were like 3 of you touching your face when I said that.
And you were just doing it too.
Which is not unusual. We had a meeting earlier today, kind of a regional meeting, superintendent, having this very same discussion. And in that discussion, like 4 people are in the room touching their face, because that's just human nature. All right. There is that same tendency on a much less controlled basis if you're 4 or 5 or 6, and there is the added almost invitation of play with the thing if you're a kid. So in talking to medical people, which we'll do before we come down on whether you should wear it or you shouldn't wear it, what we want to know from them is, here's what we believe the concerns are with a young child wearing a mask. Does the benefit outweigh the risk of them continually touching their face? Or them putting the thing down on the floor, or any of you all can think of 2 dozen things they can do with it. Going to grabbing another kid and pulling it out and watch it flop back. I mean, they're kids, they do stuff like that. That's the kind of information that we need and we'll get from a medical professional.
Well, and I wasn't really, I mean, I was using the mask as an example, but I guess, what I'm asking, I get that a group of people got together and came up with these recommendations, but I also would imagine that if we employed our own experts in asking some questions about how this is going to look for our students, there may be things, maybe specific to Greenville County, maybe not, that would show that by doing what you're requiring or asking us to do, we would actually be unable to provide any quality education experience. So in those cases, can we justify, how are those recommendations written? Are they written in a way that we could justify why we're deviating without really exposing ourselves to a lot of liability? I mean, you don't have a conversation about
There are areas that you have to overcome, well, there's really one area, social distancing, in the classroom and on the bus. A mask really doesn't mitigate that. The mask is a separate issue. They're saying wear a mask all the time, anywhere.
Okay. And then
See, some of those recommendations are coming from CDC and DHEC. So they aren't coming from, there's somebody sitting on a committee that doesn't have a background in public health or epidemiology. Those ones are coming out of DHEC and CDC. So we've met with DHEC during this process. We've also accessed medical professionals through some of the providers, and also through MUSC. So before we do something that's contrary to some advice that's coming from CDC or DHEC, we're going to be real sure that we've got an expert advice that either supports what they're saying or says, well, they didn't take into account these things. If these things are the case, then we wouldn't recommend you do that.
like if you had other mitigation measures. So then the other question sort of related to that, not quite, is there any conversation, or could we have a conversation about if we could have parents sign waivers to the social distancing aspect in the classroom? Either because their child had had COVID, or because they would rather have a normal experience, would waivers stand up and?
We've got them sign waivers to do athletics. We added a waiver before we let them come back in to the phase 1 or stage 1 of athletic practices. All those athletes, the parents had signed acknowledgement of the conditions, and I agree to do this, and this is the rid, that kind of thing. I mean, you can get people to sign waivers. It shows, I guess, prudence in your approach. I'll let Doug speak to whether there's a tremendous legal value in it or not, but it's certainly an acknowledgement that there is risk, and you acknowledge there's risk. And it's not like this coronavirus is a secret. That's one of the things we talked about when we talked about holding graduations, although we took into account, put in place all those safeguards. Well, very clearly, this wasn't something that you'd have had to have been on a deserted island for 6 months not to know what's going on. So there is, I think, the benefit, there's general public awareness that there is this virus out there, and you're not necessarily going to be able to look at someone and identify whether or not they carry it. So I think there is some generally accepted risk, and it's a generally acknowledged virus. It doesn't speak to the waivers.
Sure. Dr. Roach is correct. I drafted a waiver, and athletes have been signed that waiver in order to start back this summer for fall sports. There is a distinction between extracurricular activities, which are considered a privilege beyond the scope of your normal school day, versus the rights to a public education. So that's one aspect to consider, or as waiver, whether it would be appropriate. But I think Dr. Royster said it perfectly, is, I think legally speaking, and this goes back to what we discussed, I guess, several minutes ago now, as far as liability, there is, whether it be COVID or other diseases, there is an assumption of the risk of daily lives and realizing where we stand in today's world. So I think there's some inherent risk, and certainly our practice will limit those risks. And as far as legally and liability, though, I think there's a lot of case law out there, whether, and of course, COVID is new, so we're dealing mostly with flu and other situations that talks about the assumption of risk and really prevents liability.
All right, it's 5:50 and we have a hard stop at 6:10. So we're gonna move on to the next item on the agenda, and then if there's more time, we'll come back, if that's okay.
Darren, it's okay. After our meeting on Friday, if anything significantly changes, we'll let you know and you can pass it on to the meeting.
Thank you. I would be remiss if we didn't move on without saying thank you to you. I know that you and Dr. Turner spent an incredible amount of extra time on this work. I really appreciate all the time it's spent. The next item on the agenda is item 1.02, which is the update on federal policy, including the CARES Act fund for private schools.
Okay, I can do this quickly. Not a lot has changed. I have passed along the letter that the board approved, Molly Spearman, and I also shared that letter with our U.S. congressional offices. We are also hearing that the U.S. Department of Ed and Secretary DeVos are going to open up a comment period regarding that CARES Act money in private schools. That has not happened yet. When I did talk to the congressional offices, they said they had gotten a lot of communication about it and a lot of concerns. There is language in subsequent legislation that will deal with COVID-related issues called HEROES. That has not moved, but the language in that does clarify what the intent of the CARES Act money, where that money should be going as far as public schools are concerned. But right now, that's a standstill.
When you spoke to our representatives in DC, they're hearing a lot of feedback. Are they inclined to understand the concerns that we and the other districts are bringing?
They understand the concerns, they were non-committal.
Okay. Any questions for Ms. Horton on the CARES Act funds for private schools?
Just as information, the state association also sent a letter to the principal offices about the same.
Thank you, Mr. Salem. Okay, hearing none, item 1.03 is an update on state policy.
And also be very quick about that. Next week, we have the Senate going in on Tuesday at 12 noon and the House going in on Wednesday at 1 o'clock. They're going to be talking about 1.9 billion in CARES money and taking the recommendations of Accelerate SC on how that money should be spent. We expect them to meet 1 or 2 days, and then from that point on, they're operating under a sine die resolution that is open to the call of the chair to call them back in if there's a need for that to happen. If that does not happen, the next time they'll meet will be September 15th, and that is to look at the budget, to look at gubernatorial vetoes, anything COVID related, and also they put in the sine die resolution that they can consider anything that has already passed one house and moved over to the other house. So we'll see what happens, but they've given themselves 2 weeks for that. After that, it will also be open to the call of the chair through the early part of November. And that's pretty much it as far as the economic books. We expect for them to close out the year in August, so that's why they're meeting in September, so they'll have a better idea of what the economy looks like, what our numbers look like. And that's pretty much what's going on at the state level.
Julie, do you expect there to be a sense of urgency to restore things like the teacher increases during this fiscal year, or do you see this as more something they will try to restore as part of the next year's budget?
I don't think we know. I don't think we know. I think once we close the state books for August and they get a good picture, we'll have a better sense. But until that happens, I don't think we really know what direction we're going.
Any questions for Ms. Warren? Mr. Shannon,
Well, this goes to all of
also
us.
a member of the chamber, advocacy.
Well, sure, I know that. You know, we're talking about what is it we want to, what messages do we need to make sure that they get from us? And if I'm thinking properly, the single most important issue facing us starting schools in the fall, assuming we try to start them on a 5-day week, is getting kids to school. And I don't see any way to do that based on the social distancing rules that we have or whoever is established right now. I don't know if the U.S. Department of Education or EPA or anybody else has any rules on that. But I think it is critical to understand that if I'm correct, you correct me, Dr. Horsley, if I'm wrong, we simply cannot start schools with buses running on a, 20, 30, 40% ridership. That simply is impossible. Second to that, I think, is spacing in schools and all the stuff about whether you have, 6-year-olds wearing masks and touching their faces. I think that would be the second most important thing. So those are 2 things. Having money go to private schools, I don't agree with, I oppose. And if we can get that taken out, I think that would be important. But most important, I think, is school buses and secondly, the school classrooms. And I think we should all make sure that we're conveying that message out. Again, correct me if something that's more important. Obviously, budgets and all those things are important. But we're going to take a couple of things we're going to spend time on. Those are the things that come to my mind. That's my question.
Thank you, Mr. Shannon. Any questions or comments for this section? Hearing none, then the next item on the agenda is item 1.04. I intended to provide you with an update on the proposed Greenville County Council open plan, which was their proposed use of $91 million that was allocated directly to council for COVID relief services. From the time I put it on the agenda till now, it's already gone through the committee of the whole and been voted on and shown up in the paper. And so we'll skip this agenda item because there now is no need to provide you an update on what's pending because it's already passed. So we'll move on to item 1.05, which is the review of the South Carolina Heritage Act. So before Mr. Webb and Ms. Horton take the section, I do want to be clear that I was asked by a board member to explain what happened at Clemson University as far as Tillman proposed rename and how that fit within the Heritage Act. And I've asked Mr. Webb and Ms. Horton to give us an update specifically on the act and on what happened at Clemson. And that is the limit for which this discussion is for today, is on the actual act and any questions related to it. This is, my understanding is not in the purview of the advocacy committee to talk about any future conversations about renaming schools at some other time would be more appropriate to happen through the whole. So let's focus on, so we start with Mr. Webb. We just
I'll take the statute and I'll turn it over to Ms. Horton for, how about that?
It's good.
All right, so there are really two aspects of the Monuments Act, Heritage Act, they call it those. This 10.165 is the actual law. The first part of the statute deals with the relocation, removal, disturbance, and altering of monuments. And it requires a 2/3 approval of the General Assembly before any historic monument is removed, disturbed, altered, or relocated. Then the second aspect of the statute states that no street, bridge, structure, park, preserve, or other public area of this state or any of its local subdivisions, which school districts in South Carolina are considered a local subdivision, dedicated in memory of or named for an historic figure or historic event may be renamed or rededicated, again, without that 2/3 approval of the General Assembly. So that is a general overview of the statute.
Ms. White, and Clemson.
At Clemson, okay, you probably heard about this in the news, but last week, the Clemson board voted on two things. One was that they removed the name Calhoun from their honors college, so that's a programmatic thing that they did. And then they also approved a resolution that the Clemson will go to the General Assembly under the Heritage Act and ask for an exception in order to rename Tillman Hall to Main Hall. And what the resolution says, it's very explicit that this will be the only thing that they will ask for under the Heritage Act and an exception. I will tell you that I know that the leadership at Clemson, advocacy folks at Clemson have reached out to the leadership in the House and Senate to let them know that they were going to be doing this. And so it was a done deal. It was a unanimous vote. And that is going to be very narrow as far as Tillman Hall. Now, this cannot be even considered until going into 2021, because the General Assembly, when they do reconvene this year, they're limited under that sine die resolution. Those things that I mentioned earlier, they cannot do anything that is new. I will tell you also, the University of South Carolina put out a statement today. Its board is meeting on Friday, and it is going to take the same kind of action to ask the General Assembly to allow it to rename Sims Dorm, which is named after J. Marion Sims. They do not say that they are limiting themselves to just the Sims building, because it has something called a Presidential Commission on University History. It's that commission that takes a look at the names of buildings, makes recommendations to President Caslen. Caslen takes that look forward. But right now, they're going to be looking at the Sims dormitory.
So just to repeat a couple of things to make sure that I'm understanding correctly. So if this board had the desire to change the name of a building that was named after a person, then the action would need to be that the board would make a request to the General Assembly for that to be done.
That's correct.
The board doesn't have the authority to change the name of a building named after a person on its own.
That is correct, for a historic figure.
But the distinction between the facility and the program is the difference. If the board wanted to change the name of an activity, change the colors of the school, change the mascot, those are things the board would have the ability to change on its own without having to go to the General Assembly.
As long as it would not qualify as a structure, of course, the other things that's specifically delineated in the statute, but that is correct.
And I think one thing that you said that I think is really important is even if we made a request, the earliest that the General Assembly could take up that request would be when they convene in January of 2021.
Correct.
All right, are there any questions for Mr. Webb or Ms. Worthington? Again, please focus specifically on the act.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, Doug, could you?
turn on your microphone?
I'm sorry. Doug, can you hear me? Could you explain again the difference in the first part and the second part of the Heritage Act? I didn't get quite all the differences there, and I haven't looked it up.
Sure. So the first part really deals with monuments and memorials, and those being relocated, removed, disturbed, or altered. So it protects memorials and monuments from being relocated, removed, disturbed, or altered. The second part deals with naming and renaming.
That applies to local subdivision.
Political subdivision. Yes, sir.
I guess getting out a simple question is if there was a need to rename, say, Wade Hampton High School, that would come through this organization. It would not require a two-thirds vote, am I correct?
No, it would require a 2/3 vote by the General Assembly.
Okay.
If we're talking about a structure, yes, sir.
Well, but I mean, the school as opposed to a structure, I'm not really sure I understand the Wade Hampton High School is a structure of a school. But
Building, structure, yes, sir, physical location.
Right.
Good call.
Julie, the Tillman building was named something else before it was named Tillman, right?
It's called Main Hall, like
Okay,
Main
and-
Street, Main Hall.
Okay, and so they're trying to take that back to that,
Yes.
so they still have to get 2/3 votes,
Yes,
if they wanted to go back to what it was named before it was named Tillman.
yes.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Dr. Valentine?
Excuse me, could you say that you expected it to be just a done deal? Like you said, it was a narrow.
No. I'm saying the vote of the Clemson Board of Trustees.
Okay,
They had had a conversation with leadership of the House and the Senate that they would be pursuing legislation. And what I'm saying is the vote of the Clemson Board to approve their resolution saying they would do so. It was unanimous.
so all they were doing in that conversation is letting them know that it was coming.
Yes.
But as far as you know, there was not
A commitment one way or the other, no, not that I know of.
okay, and where does it stand that there were some students from USC and Clemson who are trying to advocate for getting that law changed? And what position are they advocating or trying to get the law itself changed? Is that something, Mr. Webb, that you could?
I don't know anything about that.
All I've heard of are petitions from students and or former students for particular buildings on campuses. I haven't heard anything about Heritage Act, so.
I will bring that back up if I find where I saw the reference to that. So if we have a statue that we put into Greenville downtown honoring someone, does it not matter who funds the naming of the item? I mean, why would the state be able to control whether we put it up? They don't have anything to say about it. So why would they have to say about whether we took it back down?
I believe the deciding factor is if it's placed in a public area, public property, or property of a political subdivision, versus private property. That's the decision.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Valentine. Ms. Wells?
So what happens if you don't ask the others to do it? If Clemson had just said, we're just changing, it's just Old Main, we're taking all the reference to Tilden Hall. What sort of fine? What's the ramifications of them?
There is nothing specific in the law or as what course of action legally could be imposed. Certainly, I could never encourage you to violate the law.
I would not expect you to, Mr. Wells.
And let me go in reverse. I would actually encourage you to follow.
It just remind you that when was the Heritage Act passed?
2000.
And what was the context of when they passed that? There was some things going on.
What did you say?
It was directly connected to historic statues and the Confederate flag on the state house.
So that's part of that.
Thank you, Ms. Wells. Mr. Meek?
Thank you. As far as I can remember, the only time the legislature has done that is when they remove the flag. Really, you know, did they ever have considered anything else?
I do not know. I do not know if they've changed the names of anything.
No.
Any other.
And, you know, it would be easier, in my mind, to try to repeal the law, only 50+1%. And it is trying to get 2/3 of the legislature, but, they're stuck on that, and I think as far as, answering this well, what I would imagine they could require the Department of Education, whomever, to withhold funds if they broke the law. We, along with everyone else, are sworn to uphold the law. I think that it would be very precarious if we got in that situation. So I think, the real object got to be to repeal the law completely. But that's just my opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Meek. Before we move on, I would like to clarify that I think that I heard Ms. Will say if one chose to violate the law and not if we chose to violate the law. So just for the record, to be clear that it was a hypothetical question and not a suggestion. I think that concludes all questions for this section. I don't believe there are any resolutions or positions that came up during this meeting, so if there is no other business, then I will entertain a motion to approve.
Is it 10 after?
It's 10 after.
Can we have,
We need to.
can we have 3 minutes?
It's 16.
Without objection, we'll give Dr. O'Connor 3 minutes for her questions about accelerated ed.
Thank
3
you.
minutes,
Thank you. If this relates to policy recommendations
3 minutes.
and what you, Dr. Forster, said, that you wanted the recommendations to be clear. Not that they have to be uniform from district to district, because there are variations in what waves of help might look like. But to be clear, is there anything that we could do to just ask for that? To say, please be specific where possible, so that when we're trying to follow the best medical and health guidelines, you can put specifics around that for districts to make it easier to decide, so that we're not feeling like we're just out there making ourselves vulnerable in these decisions.
I think the point of the tip is that section where they talk about low, medium, and high spread. They define in there things you ought to do, if I recall that term.
They took out that part of that, and DHEC did not find that.
Well, they say you should do these things if you have low, medium, or high, but they don't define low, medium, or high. If there were a point of emphasis or of particular help, to me, it would be that the medical professionals in our state, that should be DHEC, that they should determine, do you have low, medium, or high? Then we know how to act
Yes, I think
in
that's.
response to that.
It seems like a reasonable way that we can help the states. We want to follow the medical recommendations, but without additional clarification, we would not know whether we are low, medium, or high. That seems reasonable to me as an outcome. And secondly, when you say DHEC versus CDC, is that kind of the local equivalent? Are they working together and using the same guidelines? And if so, why would they be so focused on social distancing on the buses, but not in the classrooms?
Well, DHEC being the local agency, local meaning state level agency, to which we must respond. CDC, while they are certainly an agency that has plenty of trained, knowledgeable, and professional personnel, who give you good recommendations, they're not a regulatory agency. In our state, DHEC is the regulatory agency that governs those things related to health. So for us, the more clear direction should come from, at least in my opinion, the responsible state agency, and that's DHEC.
May I ask Dr. Turner, who it is that thinks that one mask per child would be adequate? Entity in this state,
I'm not saying anyone thinks that's adequate, that's all they would fund.
Is that the state?
That's the state department.
So it's not as though they think that would be healthy answer, just that that's what they would want to do. So I guess if we had a decision coming from DHEC that was going to be mandated, then we might need to go back and advocate for payment for something that is mandated.
Well, just like they basically have said you need to disinfect one time a day. Their stated intent at the outset of this, and I think the state superintendent didn't request that, was for the state to provide funding to districts to pay for that. We were informed last week that wasn't going to happen. Of course, as you all know, you supported the vote for budget last night, that included that in our budget so we could do it. Because we need to do that whether somebody else is paying for it or not, the health and safety of our students and our employees. But they offer many suggestions, but not necessarily accompanying funding to carry out those suggestions.
Thank you, Judge O'Connor. I'll entertain a motion that we adjourn. Have a motion and a second. All in favor? Advocacy Committee